Good to see you all, friends. Also, Shirley, who recently came to visit in person, actually, in Italy. So lovely to see you both in the flesh and in virtual reality. And welcome to all the friends, and Anumodana Satu to Manori, Matthias, and all the organizers and all the supporters of Anukampa Bhikkhuni project. It's just very beautiful to see now, actually from the same continent. So yeah, very beautiful, beautiful things to see. And yeah, so actually today is a very, very auspicious day to meet, since it's the Uposatha, it's the new moon. So how delightful to actually meet and practice the Dhamma together on this day. So we can, hopefully everybody has been practicing the 8 precepts today. And if not, well, then maybe we can make the aspiration, actually, the resolution to practice take the 8 precepts at least twice a month during the days of the Uposatha, so the new moon and the full moon. And if we're particularly diligent, or if we have mastered that, then we can also take it 4 times a month, right, as lay people. So also the quarter moons as well. And it's just a beautiful practice that actually also the Buddha encourages us to reflect on how, whenever we're, the lay people are practicing with the 8 precepts, they're actually practicing like an arahat, like an actual enlightened being. That is the conduct of an enlightened being. So it's, just fills already the heart of awe and inspiration, and seeing how we're becoming enlightened slowly but surely, just by surrendering, to this path, by taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and committing to the Noble Eightfold Path. So this being said, we can start with a little bit of meditation practice, and then talk a little bit more about the Dhamma, so we can get in a comfortable seated position. And when we're ready, we can slowly close our eyes. And take a few moments to relax the entire body, from the top of the head to the tip of the toes. And remembering to keep a smile on our faces. We can actively bring to mind a picture of the Buddha, an image of our teacher that we particularly like, that we're particularly drawn to. Maybe of a statue, of a painting, a drawing. And keeping that smile on our faces, we can use this image as the backdrop of our mind. It's not terribly important how clear and sharp the image is, but what is important is the effect that bringing that image to mind creates in the heart. And what we're aiming for is awe, it's inspiration, it's the quality of faith, the quality of respect, the quality of veneration, the qualities also of gratitude, of gratefulness for our original teacher who has spent countless decades sharing the Dhamma for our benefits and the benefits of countless sentient beings. And this legacy that has lasted for at least 2,500 years. These beautiful teachings preserved by our brothers and sisters and friends in Asia. And have been brought to us wherever we are today in the world, have been preserved to allow us to understand suffering and, most importantly, bring suffering to an end. And now that we have actively brought to mind and to the heart all of these good qualities, we can contemplate the qualities of our original teacher, of the Buddha. And I will first chant in Pali the qualities of the Buddha, and we will then contemplate the qualities of the Buddha one by one. In our meditation practice. Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho Vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sata deva manusanam bhutto bhagavati. One of the beautiful qualities of the Buddha that we can contemplate today is that the Buddha is Itipiso Bhagava Araham. He's an arahant. He is worthy of respect, worthy of offerings, worthy of veneration. Because he has not only preached the Dhamma, but realized the Dhamma. Has done what needed to be done. And is therefore worthy to be worshipped, worthy to be our foremost kalyanamitta, our foremost spiritual friend. And so we can spend a few moments contemplating this quality of the Buddha in our hearts and minds. And another quality of the Buddha is to be Samma Sambuddho, perfectly awakened by himself. Not only the Buddha is in fact an awakened being, not only has he realized the Dhamma, but he actually also discovered the Dhamma at the time and place where these teachings had been lost, weren't available anymore. The Buddha did the work to discover the teachings, practiced the teachings, realized the teachings, and also taught the teachings to countless beings. And so we can contemplate how standing of a quality this is. As we know, it's very hard to realize the Dhamma, even though we have these teachings available, let alone if we didn't have them available. Only an exceptional being would be capable to discover and realize the Dhamma all by himself. Another quality of the Buddha is to be Vijja Charana Sampanno, perfectly accomplished in knowledge and conduct. The Buddha's knowledge and understanding is perfect, complete, and also his conduct is likewise Not only does he practice what he preaches, but he has realized what he preaches, and whether people are looking at him or not, these qualities are always the same. His behavior is impeccable, whether he's alone or he's around a crowd. And we can contemplate how exceptional this is, how marvelous it is to have a teacher who's knowledgeable, who's wise, but also has impeccable conduct. And another quality of the Buddha is to be sugato, well gone. The Buddha is truly fortunate. He has reached the best destination, Nibbana, the cessation of suffering. The goal of the spiritual path has been realized. And that is truly a wonderful quality of our teacher. That we can contemplate for a few moments. And another amazing quality of the Buddha is to be lokavidu. The Buddha is a knower of the world. He understands the world. He's not shaken by the world and not confused by the world anymore. He understands the world and he transcends the world. Breaking the chains that bound us to the world. And that is really quite exceptional. And we can contemplate this quality of the Buddha for a few moments. And another quality of the Buddha is to be anuttaro purisadhamma sarati, the utmost trainer of those who can be trained. The Buddha, not only has he realized the teachings, but is also a perfect instructor who can help others attain awakening if they have the conditions that are ripe in order to make progress in the path. The willingness to be trained and disciplined, the willingness to lend an ear, the willingness to at least take the teachings as a working hypothesis, and question our pre-existing beliefs and convictions. And therefore be trained by the Dhamma, adopt the right view of the Dhamma, and realize the Dhamma like our teacher. And so we can contemplate how the Buddha in his lifetime was able to teach to countless sentient beings that were so different one from the other. And it's really a remarkable quality, the one to understand, to help the people in front of us. And right now, as we are sitting in front of the Buddha, sitting in front of this beautiful image of the Buddha that we're venerating in our hearts and minds, we can contemplate how beautiful this quality of our teacher is. Another quality of the Buddha is to be Satta Deva Manussanam, teacher not only of human beings, but also of divine beings. That is quite exceptional, that a human being is capable to teach not only other human beings, but also beings who have had rebirth in paradise, a very refined, supreme rebirth. And only an exceptional being like the Buddha, who has realized awakening, can do so, as he has gone even beyond paradise, beyond any type of existence, even the loftiest, the best, the most aspired or desirable form of existence, and is therefore someone that any sentient being can look up to, can worship, and can learn from. And so we can contemplate this other amazing quality of our teacher. And the last two qualities of the Buddha are to be Buddho Bhagavati. Buddha, of course, the awakened one, and Bhagavan, blessed one. The Buddha has woken up from this dream that is sometimes also quite a nightmare of samsara. He has woken up to really the way things are. And that's such a blessing for himself and for all sentient beings that have the opportunity to also wake up, also transcend suffering, also transcend old age, sickness, death, and rebirth. And again, old age, sickness, and death. And again, rebirth. And again, old age, sickness, and death. And again, rebirth. And in this nightmarish cycle of birth and death, endless cycle, the Buddha has woken up from it, put an end to it, and has taught us the way out of this suffering, the way to finally transcend this all for our benefit and the benefit of others. And as he's so blessed, we also have the opportunity to receive these blessings, and we can contemplate for a few moments these beautiful qualities of the Buddha, our teacher. And as we're coming to the end of our meditation practice together this evening, we can slowly bring our hands in Anjali. We can chant together the qualities of the Buddha and then say 3 times sadhu and come out of our meditation practice. Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho Vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we can open our eyes and stretch a little bit if we need to. So we can pay homage to our teacher. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. So the topic tonight is religious Buddhism, which happens to be also the Uposatha, as we were mentioning. So thought about sharing Buddhanussati, right? Mindfulness of the qualities of the Buddha, of our original teacher. And actually, when this topic, the title of this topic came to mind, actually, Venerable Chanda was asking me for for topics, but back then I had no idea what to talk about. So it's a little bit difficult, right? Since we don't prepare talks ahead of time, then it's a little bit difficult to actually give a title of a talk a few months ahead of time, because you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about in September. So the reason that religious Buddhism came to mind as a title was actually because I was I've been translating the suttas in Italian, which is obviously my mother tongue, and it's very interesting. You know, whenever we actually listen to the Dhamma, or we read the Dhamma, or we translate the Dhamma in our language, in our own language, then things start having a bit of a different ring to it, and they start speaking to us in a different way. And at a certain point, this thought came into my mind. I was like, just, I heard so much living in the United States for over 15 years. I've heard over and over again the words, secular Buddhism. But then when I started translating in Italian, Buddhismo secolare, I was like, oh, this is so absurd. What an absurd, actually, terminology that I never found absurd in English, because even though, obviously secular and secolare are actually very similar, it just has a bit of a different ring to it. So I never actually quite contemplated. And what does secular mean? It means secolare, means of the world, right? Ingrained in the world. And, as I was translating the suttas, it's all about transcending the world. So I thought, this is just the most bizarre terminology, and also actually quite depressing. In a way. Not to speak poorly, of the friends who practice, the teachings in this way, but I thought, wow, like, because it also happened that at a certain point, I looked a little bit at the news here and there. Since we live in the forest, we hardly ever are exposed to the news. So we actually have to, sometimes we hear a few things about some lay friends. Actually, when Shirley came, she updated us on all the tragedies that are happening in the world. And also today, another friend came and from Iran, and also updated us with a lot of really horrible things that are happening in that area of the world as well. And yeah, so as I was translating, at a certain point, I opened the news and I was like, wow, it just gets very, very, really, wow, these times are quite horrible. But it's not really the news, actually. It's not really news. If we pick up a history book, actually, the news are, to a certain degree, that last century we've had lots of decades of peace in particular part of the world, which so happens to be, after Second World War, Europe. We've had several decades of peace, and also in the United States, actually, things have been relatively peaceful within the country, but not obviously outside of the country. Most of the world has been in pretty bad shape as well, right? So it's a little bit old news. Like all the news that we're listening to today, they're actually quite old news. And it's quite terrifying when we think about it in those terms. Obviously, it's quite tragic because we're seeing it and we're experiencing it in our present life. And if we're not experiencing it obviously directly in the place where we live, it's very, very close by. Before I was in the United States, but now I'm actually in Italy, and it's very tangible. Also the fact that so close by, right? In Israel and Gaza, like all the tragedies that are happening, they're really, really close, really near. So it's very heartbreaking. Actually, where the monastery is, the land that has been acquired for Antica d'Italia, actually the town that is close by, not Acquaviva, but Gioia del Colle, there is a NATO, I think you say in English, airplane thing. So the military planes are these days doing a lot of exercise because they're getting ready for any type of possible war, also because of the Ukraine border and everything. So actually, even as monastics, as we are like peacefully there. The first time that this happened, at a certain point, I thought it was Mara with his armies. I was like, I think I'm actually about to attain awakening because I'm seeing Mara that is coming with this army. I didn't know there was a military airport close by. And so I thought I was hallucinating because these planes are really close and very loud and very scary and creepy. But then I understood that that's what was happening. It was good. It's actually like it keeps it real. Otherwise, if we're in the forest, it's too peaceful, and then we think that well, it's actually quite blissful and it's quite nice to be in samsara after all. Like, look at all of this nature. But then the military planes come and remind us of these old news, of this terrible greed, hatred, and delusion that just inevitably creates havoc, right? Creates this awfulness for everyone. And so when we actually think about it in those terms, it can be very, very depressing. Samsara can be very, very depressing, the world. And the idea of actually staying in the world or coping with the world, I don't know. It's actually a little bit pessimistic. We're like, okay, maybe we can reduce a little bit of stress, maybe we can reduce a little bit of suffering, but we still have to, I mean, there is just an unprecedented, there's no actual evidence that this could ever come to an end. But when we think about in terms of actually religion, what religion really is and what religion really provides is actually a hope that there is an end to this, that there is an end to this inevitable existential suffering, that there is an end to this greed, hatred, and delusion. And what Buddhism is actually incredibly, what the Buddha's teaching really provides us is this incredible, wow, like humongous good news that we don't even have to wait until next life. Like it's actually accessible right here, right now, if we actually do the work, right? We can see it for ourselves. We can really, welcome it and actually practice it and bring this suffering to an end, really transcend the world. And not transcend the world in this sort of apathetic way, which sometimes can happen in the heart, right? We're like, okay, we can't fix the world, so therefore I'll just become indifferent to the world. So I'll just not care. So I'll just step out and just not deal with anything. All right, that can be, it's the near enemy of equanimity is the indifference, right? So there's always these two extremes. Either we get too involved or we pretend that we are putting things behind, but instead we are stuffing them in. We're actually like feeding them even more and depressing us even more. But instead it's something a little bit different. Also the message, the teaching that the Buddha is offering us. Which is a teaching of actually fully understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about the world, fully understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about samsara, and fully understanding actually what is accessible, what is possible outside. And so I've been contemplating a lot actually also on this sutta, the Raja Sutta, that is in Samyutta Nikaya 4.20, if I remember correctly, where essentially there is the Buddha that is a little bit pondering. Actually, at a certain point, this thought comes to his mind of whether it's possible to have a ruler, someone who has perfect ethics, who is actually a really good person, good ruler, that would not actually that would rule without creating any suffering or without having anyone oppress others under his name, right? I'm paraphrasing. And so he's pondering whether it's basically that is something really feasible. And Mara, at a certain point, reads his mind and goes to the Buddha, and he's like, well, actually, Buddha, you know that I think that's you. Actually, you have the most perfect conditions to be a really ethical ruler, to actually really make a difference in the world. As a matter of fact, you also have all of these superpowers. You know, you can actually transform this whole mountain, the highest mountain here, into gold, and you can like help all sentient beings. You can save, you know, so many different beings, right? From because you would have the resources, endless resources. You have superpowers. That's really, really incredible. And you also have ethics. You have this whole set of great, awesome conditions to help the state of the world. And once the Buddha actually takes that in, what does he reply? Well, clearly we know, obviously the spoiler, we know that the Buddha did not become a ruler. But what he tells Mara fundamentally is that it doesn't matter, like if you have a a mountain, basically, you transform it into gold. It doesn't, there's no, you can have multiple mountains, essentially. It doesn't matter how many mountains of gold you can have. Nothing will ever be enough. Nothing will ever be sufficient, fundamentally. And then when one understands that where suffering comes from, and suffering comes from acquisition, fundamentally, and then he says, basically, how could one even lean towards sensual pleasures? How could one lean towards basically what is of the world, right? And so when one realizes that all of these attachments, all of these basically acquisitions are basically Mara's trick to get us wrapped in this world, then the Buddha replies, like a person basically would just train themselves in order to remove this attachment, to remove right, this acquisition. And so it's a very, very interesting thing to contemplate. Very, very interesting thing to contemplate. Also because it's not that the Buddha is our teacher was not a Pachika Buddha, that he attained awakening and disappeared, right? He also spent a lot of time actually being of benefit to many sentient beings, but in a different way, right? In a way that wasn't by doing what actually Mara suggested for him to do. And we see that today. We can wonder, we can ponder that. How is it possible? If we can think, I think pretty much any decent person has had this thought, like, oh, if only I had X amount of money, if only I had X amount of resources, I could help so many different beings, right? I definitely had that thought. So it's very human, very, very beautiful, also very kind, very compassionate. But when we actually think, actually these days, what is really good about the news is also it gives us some clear examples in the flesh of what the Buddha is talking about. Now we have a really crazy situation in the world where we have certain people that have, very few people that have so many ridiculous resources. So they don't have superpowers in the sense of like how the Buddha had them. But they have super economic, super material powers. Yet, it seems like the investment is a little bit different, right? There is not an investment in actually doing something for people, in giving relief. But rather, there is something else, like, for example, going to Mars or creating new ways in order to exploit the planet, right? And why is that? Because essentially, there is no end to greed. And whenever we're actually, in fact, accumulating a lot of material wealth, well, it's very difficult if we don't have a basis of Dhamma to actually use it skillfully. As a matter of fact, we will probably get very, very intoxicated. And then it's very difficult to actually see the Dhamma, to realize the Dhamma. And as a matter of fact, what is that? That is just acquisition. That is attachment. That is basically, as the Buddha says, the root of suffering. And so the Buddha once again goes not with a sort of patch up, not following Mara, not following the ideas, the hook of Mara, but rather instead he goes to the root of giving us the actual tools to transcend this all, to actually uproot suffering, to uproot this endless cycle of rebirth, to actually have wisdom while we are in samsara in order to make progress in the path, and to have wisdom also in, obviously, the more we practice generally in the path, the more we. And so we have to be very careful because, merit is a synonym of happiness, but also merit also comes with a lot of good good acquisitions, right? Which, if we are wise, we can use those acquisitions for our benefit and the benefit of others, in the sense of using those tools for the sake of awakening, for the sake of cessation, for the sake of nibbana. But if we are not careful in developing wisdom, then actually we can be no different than all of the different multimillionaires, right? We're like, oh, we're reborn. We forget about everything that we've done in the past. Forget about all our trials and tribulations. We forget that actually the only reason why we have all of these good fruits is because actually maybe we have supported Anukampa monastery. And we forgot that it's because we actually offered a meal to Venerable Chanda and also to Ajahn Brahm, both Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sanghas, like a lot of merit. Right? Forget all of that. And we're like, oh, actually, this is because I am so great and I'm so wonderful. That's why I've accumulated all of this wealth. And then what do? We start making a lot of bad deeds. And what does that then create? The conditions for then a really bad rebirth, a going, as you know, as Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it, that we are thrown to hell as if brought there. Right? So that, what is it? It's like this kind of magnet that brings us to a really bad destination. And then we're back to not square one, we're back to square minus a million. Right? Because if we actually do some really, really bad deeds, as we see many people doing bad deeds these days, then yeah, it will be very, very difficult to actually have a human rebirth. It's very difficult in an infernal realm or in an animal realm to even have the opportunity to make a good deed. No matter how much we romanticize the animal world. Very, very difficult to make merit. Very, very difficult to get out of that predicament. Very difficult to then have a human rebirth. And even if we have a human rebirth, very difficult to encounter the Dhamma. And if we encounter the Dhamma, very difficult to understand the Dhamma. And if we understand the Dhamma, very difficult also to have conditions where we can actually practice the Dhamma. Right? So we have such incredible, unique conditions right now that are obviously the fruit. They're not casual, they're not random. The fruit of really incredible good deeds, good merit that we've done in this lifetime and also previous lifetimes. But it's very easy to forget, very easy to get into the secular, very easy to like get stuck into what is of the world, essentially, and forget that actually these teachings weren't to make us a little bit happier in the world or a little bit less stressed or a little bit more productive or a little bit whatever we want it to be. But they're really actually about transcending the world. They're really about transcending suffering. They're really about putting an end to this. And so it's very important to understand, I guess, for me, what I'm trying to I guess communicate poorly today, pardon my English, but really to, like understand that this incredible opportunity that we have, this incredible conditions, and really put all our effort in practicing religious Buddhism, practicing what actually is the true inheritance of the Buddha, practicing what is the legacy that our sisters, brothers, and friends from Asia have preserved so beautifully for 2,500 years. What a blessing, right? And then that doesn't mean that we don't do good in the world anymore. But actually, we do good knowing that we're not actually going to make a radical difference, right? Not having that sense of self that we are going to actually bring peace to the world or that we're going to end war, or that we're going to end all of these things. We won't have those high, lofty expectations from the world, but we're still going to try to end the war. We're still going to try to bring peace to the world. Right? We're still going to do all of these good things, but with wisdom, to understanding that this is actually wholesome. This is for our benefit and the benefit of others. And we try our best. And then if we accomplish whatever we're accomplishing, good. And if we don't accomplish it, doesn't matter. Because we have still actually cultivated a mind of compassion. We still have cultivated a mind of metta. We still have cultivated actually equanimity. We have still cultivated joy, most importantly, right? Instead of depression, because we're so attached to the result. We're still so enwrapped and entangled with the world that we don't understand how it's impossible to actually have a perennial like peaceful world. Like it's impossible. Like literally any history book doesn't even have, like it's very rare to find a parenthesis, but definitely there is no even precedent that the entire world was peaceful for even a day. That there was no war, no crime, no nothing for even one day, maybe for even one snap of the fingers. So we have to understand the terribleness of samsara, and also actually work in samsara for the benefit of ourselves and others, but with the scope of cessation. So with the understanding that this is just our spiritual practice. This is just a work of the heart. It's not a work of trying to achieve something in particular. So anyway, see, these are a few things that came to mind tonight, and we can open it up to some conversation where I hope a lot of people will be disagreeing with me, and so we can start a nice debate. Richard, yes.
Yes, hello, Ayya. Nice to see you again. Basically, yes, I was trying to agree with what you're saying. Like today, I went to see went to see a Tibetan doctor because I was sort of feeling, I've got some sort of problem physically. But the doctor was really saying that actually what my problem is, so I've got a lot of attachment, I've got a lot of stress, a lot of anger, so it's affecting my body, literally affecting my heart. So when I left that, after seeing him, I sort of contemplated that. And then I sort of remember there was a very famous, sort of lay lady, sort of teacher who used to live in India and in Calcutta. Her name was sort of Bitama, which is quite famous. And I managed to sort of see, and I sort of noticed on the internet, on Facebook, that her little saying, because she has little sayings come up occasionally, and her little saying that this literally today was actually, you can do this, you can do the practice, but you have to use wisdom. You have to let go. So like it sort of like clicked, it sort of clicked on my head. Like that. Okay, maybe just for a little while, for a day, obviously, but just for a little while it seemed to click. And all this anger that I wasn't even aware of. I was aware of it, but it was really shown to me today by the Tibetan doctor it sort of dropped away. It's because then I realized that actually all I have to do is let it go, and that's what I did. And it's very peaceful. So this is very nice. So this is the Buddha's wisdom, the wisdom of the Buddha, letting it go. And obviously trying to do this with equanimity, compassion, sympathetic joy, and loving kindness as well, all thrown in as well. But it's just it's very peace, very it is such a relief to remember that this is all actually very easy to deal with. You just let it go. That's what I'm trying to learn. So that's what I'm trying to learn today. But it seems to sort of work today, at least, that I understood that, the Buddha was saying that basically, just learn to let go. And then it's not a problem anymore, because it has causes and effects. It's the conditions that arise and pass away. It's not permanent. It's not mine. It's not me. It's not Richard. It's just these are things that just have occurred. They have a cause. They have a reason, but they're not permanent. They're not mine. So, with compassion to myself, at least I can let it go. And it's actually quite peaceful. So, managed to do that at least for today, so far.
Sadhu. Thank you for sharing, Richard.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
absolutely. Right. So it's very important to see also when we're experiencing strong emotions like anger, to always go to seeing the gratification, the danger, and then the escape. Right. So the gratification, actually, there is gratification in anger. Otherwise, we're not silly, right? So we actually do get entangled with things because there is a gratification. And normally the mind looks at the gratification in anger, especially if we think we're right. Righteous indignation is one particular nice dish. It's very, very yummy. Right. And so the Buddha, usually in the suttas, the sort of simile is the honey tip with the poison root. So that's what anger is. The honey tip, like, so for example, the righteousness is the honey tip. We're like, yeah, that's good. That's yummy. And then the poison root, right, is what actually makes us feel very, very, very bad. And that's the drawback, right? It's actually very exhausting, very debilitating. And so when we actually intentionally embrace the drawback instead of looking at the gratification, then it's easier to let go. But if we are too intellectual about things sometimes, and we're like, okay, being angry bad. You shouldn't be, you're Buddhist, you shouldn't be doing this, or this is not me, this is not mine. And we're like, but yeah, but it's very difficult to let it go. But instead, if we're actually seeing how painful this is, how horrible it is, which it seems that you've been doing, which I'm very grateful for your sharing, that is just so much easier to let go, because we're realizing, right, that we are picking up something that is actually, yeah, it's very hot, it's burning us. So of course we want to let it go. But instead, if we pick it up and we're like looking at something else that seems delicious, then we're just burning our entire body without realizing what we're doing, and just keeping on feeding ourselves with the relish, with the delight, with the gratification, essentially, of what we think is good. And so when it comes to also, obviously, when we're doing things in the world, as we were talking about earlier, also, right, with a different type of intention. But if we are instead obviously dealing with a lot of suffering in the world, there can be definitely a lot of righteous indignation. So something that has been very helpful for me throughout the years was also to really embrace how debilitating it was to actually encourage that righteous indignation, and to see, you know, like, okay, I have, say, 100% energy, and actually this anger or this irritation takes up 80% actually of my energy, and then I have 20% to do good. But instead, what if I actually let go of this anger? Wow, all of a sudden I have 100% to actually do good. And what we can do is replace also, sometimes we think that in order to do something, for example, in the world for the benefit of ourselves and others, like sometimes the fuel can seem to be righteous indignation, for example. We're like, oh, we acknowledge that this is horrible, so therefore we're so angry that that gives us some energy to actually do something about it. But instead, what I found more skillful is, once again, look at the drawbacks of that, let that go, and replace it with compassion. And compassion, on the other hand, actually, sometimes you have 100 energy, will give you 200. It doubles up actually the energy, because you don't have all that mental fatigue, right? And also physical fatigue. Then paradoxically, also your body becomes significantly healthier. It's like going to a meditation retreat, right? I assume that a lot of the folks here have gone to meditation retreats. All of a sudden, you need to sleep less and less and less. Right? So why is that so? It's because there's less and less weight, less and less things that we're picking up, less and less energy that we're consuming in all of these unwholesome habits of mind. And so that's a little bit what we can do. And that's why it's very important, once again, not to, to have the right goals, which the right goal should always be Nibbana. Everything that we're doing, whether it's, being involved in human rights, or whether it's shopping, or whether it's meditating, or whether it's whatever we're doing, whether we are monastics or whether we're lay people, whether we have kids or we're celibate, like whatever it is, it always has to be the goal, Nibbana, cessation of suffering. Always has to be practicing the path. And then when Nibbana is the goal, there's just a lot of cessation already of suffering. But yeah, thank you again for for sharing, knowing and letting go. Very Ajahn Chah, so summary of the teachings. Any other reflections from some other friends? Surakshi, I hope I pronounced your name properly. I cannot hear you. I think you need to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Ayya Soma, for your talk. I was just wondering about, the term Buddhist religiosity, and you were talking about secular mindfulness, and it came to mind. I remember hearing Ajahn Brahm talk about Buddhism being a religion for tax purposes. And I was just wondering, in terms of like the use of the word religion in this sense, is it just to counter the concept of secularism? So that's what just came to mind. And also I was thinking about some of the things that you said about how privileged we are to know the Dharma and to be exposed to the Dharma and to understand the Dharma, and that how much merit we would have been able to receive to be in this position. And I was just thinking, that is, it just makes you realize even more how lucky and fortunate we are. So yes, those are a couple of reflections I had.
Thank you very much, Surakshi. Yes, well, I have to say that for me, what has been very interesting is to realize how, how conditioned all of us are, right? So we're the products of our time, we're the products of our era, we're the products of of this century and the century before, of all of the different political and historical things. So we're really not special in our ideas. We're really not special in our views. We're not special in our ways that we relate to the world. We only become special actually when we are practicing the Dhamma, because we actually start practicing like a special being, which is a Buddha, someone who's awakened. And so obviously, in order to attain awakening, one needs to understand what is the state of being unawakened. And I remember actually at the beginning of my practice, as pretty much any Italian of my age and below, I was raised in a Catholic country, but I don't know anything about Catholicism. So very secular. I mean, I was baptized, but I don't remember, because in Catholicism, they do it when you're really, really young. And I was actually quite uninterested in religion. In fact, that's why it took me quite a long time to understand what I wanted to do in life. Because I was looking for all the answers basically to end suffering in other fields that were not religion. So like, for example, fashion, go figure, which is my previous life within this life. Very bizarre ways of going about the world. And so anything that had to do like also with the term religion, at a certain point, I remember I started practicing Buddhism, and I was like, yeah, I'm not religious. I'm practicing spirituality and all of these different things. And then, the usual thing that we like to talk about in the West is, but is Buddhism really a religion or not? And And there's this whole like stigma about religion, and we're so obsessed with Christianity, like in the wrong way, of like constantly talking bad about, Christianity. And then at a certain point, I started, obviously, since Buddhism is an Asian religion, I started hanging out with a lot of people born and bred in Asia. And when this whole debate of like, is Buddhism a religion or not? A lot of Thai friends were like, why are these people saying that Buddhism is not a religion? They were like, people are crazy. This is a religion. I'm very happy about my religion. And similarly, my Sri Lankan friends, etc. And then coming back to Italy, actually, I have to say, because also I was associating religion with the Vatican and, with kind of institutional Christianity. I started meeting all of these monastics in Italy, like practicing Christianity really well. And actually in Italian, the word for monastics is religioso, which means religious person. And it occurred to me that for some reason, we kind of co-opted this word of religious. Basically, it's kind of like Dhammic to talk about institution, to talk about like something, an institution of power. But the reality is that religion actually, obviously there's different ways, different ideas different definitions of religion, but really what religion has always provided is a solution to an end of suffering. And that is fundamentally what religion is. So by this definition, then obviously Buddhism is a religion, and actually is the most supreme religion, because it, you know, it actually transcends the world, but also transcends paradise. Like, we're actually not stuck anywhere. It's literally Nibbana is the most special thing, special teaching that the Buddha has given us. And so, yeah, I think we really need to own up to that. We really need to. It's a slippery slope to let go of religion, because then we get very entangled with what is secular. I think that's why for most of us, then we're like, yeah, of course, sure, secular Buddhism or secular mindfulness or secular. We are so entangled with the world. I mean, we're literally in the era of artificial intelligence. Everything is so materialistic. We are so far, culturally speaking, from understanding anything that is not material. And so this is a huge, huge danger. You know, we also see it in the suttas, when the king or the prince, I can't remember which one, but says fundamentally, he's like, yeah, the jhanas are impossible. Awakening is impossible. And the Buddha, what does he say? Well, of course, with someone so entangled with sensual pleasures, so entangled fundamentally with the world, of course, they cannot even fathom the possibility that there could be anything beyond the world, beyond their experience. And so I feel like this is basically for all of us, really. We are so intoxicated with sensual pleasures, and really the most intoxicated I think we've ever been in the history of humanity in such a large scale. So yeah, that's why it's such a paradox, you know, secular Buddhism, and why I feel like we should really understand that we're practicing a religion, and that's a good thing. And we're totally out of time. I'm so sorry, Manori, that obviously to cliche Italian. Now that I got back to Italy, I got back to our unruly ways of dealing with time.
That is perfect. Fine. Well, it was such a wonderful topic, and thank you very much for everybody as well. And I want to take this opportunity to say a few words about dana, that is generosity. So giving develops wholesome qualities that form the foundation of our Dhamma practice. And in Anukampa, we can offer several ways that we can cultivate this beautiful quality of generosity. So you can do one-time donation to Anukampa website. And if you are financially able, you can do a regular donation through standing order, or you can drop in to be a volunteer. You can email team@anukampaproject.org. And now the Vasa is going to be over in about a month's time. And so Venerable and Anagarikas are going to be in the Anukampa grove. So there will be meals, opportunities for you to provide meals, but either in person or remotely. So again, have a look at the website and book the dates if you want, if you're able to. And there is needed items as well. So there's several ways. And also I want to mention about Ayya Soma's Empty Cloud Italia. Have a look at that as well. And there is a special website for that. Thank you very much.
Satu Anumatana to all of you. All good wishes.